Don't see much in the box, but that's how it comes packaged. You can see he seals it up in a plastic bag so it's nice and protected. Let's get to the workbench. What's up, Speedy's Garage gang? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. I'm starting to feel like Mr. Rogers walking in my shop.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine?
Today, we're going to get after that 2.7 liter red-eye supercharger that we sent off to SDGMotorsports to be rebuilt. Let's get it out of the box and get after it. And Jesse actually stumbled across the video where I disassembled the supercharger, and I'll link that to the top. And he sent me this very cool shirt. Check that out. As a result of me doing that video. So Jesse, if you're watching, thanks. I think it actually fits really nice. Really like the shirt. So anyway, let's get the supercharger out of these boxes. I got to get it from here to here, and it's heavy. I have resisted opening these up just so I could do it live with you guys. So I've had this back. Jesse got it back to me very quickly, actually. I would say it was only about a week after I sent it to him. He was already saying it was ready to come back. But I've resisted the urge to open it until we could look at them together. So let's see what we got. And as a reminder, this is his engineered packaging solution that would ensure shipping would go smoothly without any problems. He includes a label both to and from, all ways, shipping directions, so you don't have to worry about that. Shows up with labels in the box, gets it to him and back to you safe and sound. So here is the snout. You know, this is hard to do one-handed, I'll tell you. So as you remember, if you were following along, the original blower pulley locked up, but something happened with the decoupler, and it basically broke the bolt on the back of this shaft. So this got a complete rebuild, all new bearings, it needed a new shaft, you got everything brand new. New coupler in the back. And you can't see it. I'll have to post a picture of it. You can barely see right here, but he actually pins the shaft to keep it from spinning behind this bolt. And I'll put a picture in here so you can sort of see what it looks like. It's similar to pinning your crank. So a dowel pin goes in between the shaft and the outer face of that race and locks them together. So you won't ever have to worry about that turning anymore. It'll make, I don't plan to swap pulleys a lot, but it'll keep all that locked together. It's got nice new pins in it. Everything good to go on the snout. And the bearing is upgraded high-speed type. So this should be good for anything I'm going to put to it. Okay, now for the supercharger itself. I love this packaging. Very dense. No, I didn't have to worry about the supercharger at all. Oh wow, he included, dang! He actually included the 518. I thought I'd have to buy that. That's a nice surprise. No gasket necessary with billet bearing plates. Do not use RTV, use anaerobic only. And I actually had picked up some of that to go with this install. Well, we're not going to see much in the box, but that's how it comes packaged. You can see he seals it up in a plastic bag so it's nice and protected. Let's get to the workbench. So it is actually completely sealed in a bag. I thought maybe he had just put it over the top, but it is like totally sealed up. I like that kind of detail. It just ensures you have a good, a good experience when you get the part back. So let's get it out of the bag and we'll start looking at what's been done. For starters, you may have already noticed the rotors are blue. So when I sent this off, I knew the decoupler pulley had failed. I had sent pictures of the rotor lobes to Jesse, as I mentioned before. He said the rotors looked fine. However, when he got the unit, this is the end plate. This bolt, not this bolt, but the factory bolt, when he went to disassemble the supercharger, this bolt head broke off, and I'll show you a picture now, just like the one did on the back of the blower snout. So he called me, or he sent me an email, and at first he was kind of like, I don't even know that it's going to need a rebuild. And he told me he really hated to take people's money for a rebuild when it really might not be necessary. So we started talking about options, and he said, hey, I can, just do a couple of things. I'll definitely rebuild the snout, but if the supercharger base doesn't need any work, he said, I don't recommend you rebuild it just to rebuild it. He said, I'll go through it thoroughly and let you know exactly what I find, but if I don't find anything, I'm going to recommend I refund your money and you keep the supercharger as is. He goes, it'll live a long, happy life. The next day he called me. Now that was an email, so he actually called me and he said, hey, I actually did find something. And that's when he found that bolt head was broken off. And he said that means something sort of violent had happened at some point, probably at RPM, and everything kind of stopped suddenly. He goes, that's usually when you'll see those bolt heads break. And he said, based on that, he said, I could technically just drill and tap the bolt, get the bolt out, and put a new one in. You'll probably never have any trouble. But since you want to know it's better than new, I'll go ahead and continue with the rebuild. But there's a caveat. Since the bolt head broke, something happened violently inside of here. It actually seized the rotors to the factory end plate. And he said the bearings and everything are seized up. He said they move, but like they're frozen. The outer race is frozen into the actual end plate. So he said that's going to mean you need new rotors, because I can spend hours trying to get them apart. He said I've already put them in my press and it won't come apart. And it's labor. He goes, this is unaccounted for labor, which is fair. I absolutely would pay him to do that. He said, or you put that labor money toward a brand new set of rotors that I happen to have on hand. You can't buy them from IHI, but he says I keep spares around, and these are brand new rotors that I've actually put a proprietary coating on. That's why it's blue. And he said that is for lubricity and to reduce heat. So that was included, and because the bearings were welded or fused into the factory end plate, it now meant it needed an end plate too. So we worked out doing the billet end plate, which improves flow dramatically. I'll put a picture of the factory one in here, but you can see how much more flow that's going to have. And he also includes these dowels, the little dowels that the pins go into. So like I said, it gets a new bolt, new everything in here, new rotors. They're coated with his special coating and much more airflow. Plus it got the new dowels. So literally better than new, just like I asked for. You can kind of see the blue rotors in there. He said he coated them blue because blue is SDG's color, and that way he'll always know. And he included a little SDGMotorsports swag. Who doesn't like swag? I've also been collecting parts for when I put this on the car. And since the supercharger was off, I figured I'd go ahead and do the FI interchiller blower spacers. Should help keep things a little bit cooler. The primary reason I got these is because the factory head gaskets, which these spacers actually replace, I'm sorry, not the head gaskets, the intake gaskets for the supercharger. You see this gap right here? There's a port that's left over. It's not used on the Hellcat. There's a gap right here between the intake and this port. And on the factory intake gasket, there is no material between this. It's just a little rubber gasket. When you start going up in boost pressure, this can actually blow out. And now you've got the crankcase being pressurized. You can have some blow-by problems, PCV, catch cans fill up, things like that. This solves that problem. It's got a great big thick piece of material between these two areas. So it solves that, plus it gives cooling. Comes with the blanket, so that'll go on the bottom of the supercharger. It came with these bolts. A lot of people don't like these. They're a little bit short, like maybe 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters too short, and they tend to rust. They're just steel. So those hex cap heads will rust. So these are zinc coated just like factory. My buddy Bull had some of these, thanks Michael, and sent them to me. Thanks for that. So these will actually go in. They are factory bolts, factory style bolts that are zinc coated, and they're the proper length. This is 10 millimeters thick. This is 10 millimeters longer. Bingo, bingo. New dowel pins. This was recommended as well by a gentleman on the Hellcat forum as well. These are 10 millimeter longer. So these are locating dowels. When you put the supercharger down on the top of the motor, there are 2 locating dowels on the passenger side, and it ensures that the pulley and everything is aligned properly for the belt not to have any problems. These also needed to be 10 millimeter longer. So these came from, I think McMaster. But anyway, I had to get a pack of 10. There's the information on them. Obviously, I will have some spares. If you happen to need one, shoot me an email. I can take care of you until I run out. Loctite 518. This is what I was going to use as an anaerobic sealant. And what anaerobic does is it acts as a gasket, but it actually doesn't start to cure until there's a lack of oxygen. So when the two pieces come together very tightly and there's no more oxygen, that's when it actually sets up. I had picked this up, but Jesse included it. So I can actually take that back. Gonna get to this in a minute. I had to decide what I was gonna do on a upper pulley. I've got a 2.7L right now. Been thinking about that. Got something in here that's gonna take care of that. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And then obviously when I change the supercharger out, I'm gonna need some coolant and distilled water, because I will lose a little bit in the old supercharger and I'll have to bleed and fill the system. So with all that out of the way, let's get this thing put back together. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as the website www.speedysgarage.net. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you out there.